welcome to another episode of Pivot and Profit, podcast brought to you by the K Financial and Pace Production. Now, in this podcast, we talk to the movers and shakers on the African continent, people who are trying to change things for us, by us. Today's guest is someone who has walked that journey. We're going to talk to her about what it takes to be top of the food chain of the telecommunications industry. What is her day-to-day like? I'm your host, Arnold Quizera. Follow us, subscribe, check out the K Financial. We're talking to the CEO of MTN Rwanda, Mapula Bodibe. Maps, thanks for making the time.
Thank you for having me.
Look, getting on guests, especially for something that is new and starting out, right? You need people to believe in you. And a part of our story at the K Financial has been just try, man. Just do it. And so we sent out this email and went back and forth with your people. And we're like, we need to get, and could you get some episodes going already before she comes on? And be like, no, we need her to be the episodes that we get going. And they made this so easy for us. And here you are. Thank you for making the time.
What an honor. I'm glad we could make it happen.
Cool. I want to talk about your journey, right? But before your journey, you have been in Rwanda 2 years now. And to many of us, even, coming back home and figuring it out, it's initially you feel like it's between a rock and a hard place. And you're like, okay, what am I really doing here? But it is such an amazing place for young people. It's been 10 years for me now, being here and, back and forth. But the opportunity that this country offers for young people, I've not seen such opportunities elsewhere on our continent. I don't know if you felt the same energy and vibrancy, and how has that journey been for you as a CEO of the biggest telco in the country?
Yeah, you're so right, eh? When you come to Rwanda, I came for the first time in July last year. I had never been here. And, my views were so contrived by what I had been told because I'd not experienced it. But as soon as you come into the country, you get a sense of just, first of all, opportunity. When you go to the airport, the experience that you get, the reception that you receive, it's just like, brimming with opportunity. But at the same time, you get a sense of energy, of, possibility. And I think it comes from, the leadership of the country and what they're trying to do. I think what really struck me, the two things that struck me about the country when you speak about young people is that how intentional they are, in their leadership. You see young people, some of the youngest ministers I've seen. I've seen some memes where they show a Rwandan minister with the minister of an equal, portfolio in another country. It's chalk and cheese. So very intentional about young people really driving the agenda of the country. But at the same time, I've also experienced how in their agenda, whether it's sports, whether it's art, whether it's, financial services, any sector, they actually create a space for young people. Very intentional again. And I think, again, this comes probably from, the way, first of all, most of the young people, or the country is comprised mainly of young people. So it's very imperative that they actually focus on that population. So for us as MTN, I work for MTN. So it's such a great sort of opportunity and a space to work within, because it means that they are so willing to really, receive and embrace the work that we're doing.
One of the things amazing about Rwanda, which I relate to personally, from me, like my personal story, right? Being raised by a single mom and having to figure out stuff. And I want to believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that relates to a lady in the field that you're in, to get to be top of the food chain or part of the people who are making the decisions that matter for your industry, is creating your seat at the table. You are constantly having to create your seat at the table. And it's having to punch above your weight kind of situation all the time. And that's the story of Rwanda, right? We're a small country. but as the leader says, not a small people that largely grew up as refugees and then had to punch above their waist to be what they are. As a Black South African woman, you know what that means. You are top of your food chain. What was that journey like? When you look back at a 19-year-old, did you ever think she would be this person?
Not at all. Yeah, definitely I would not say this is where I would have fit. Yeah, I mean, maybe let me start from the beginning. As a Black child growing up in the 1980s, one of the things I am so grateful for
I'm not calculating your age now.
is I have, my family, my parents were determined that I was going to be so well educated, because they had this thing from when I was very young. They used to tell me education is the best equalizer. You could come from any background, but if you have a good education, you are set. So from a very young age, they instilled that in me. And because of that, I had such incredible opportunities. It's not because we had a lot, but with the education that I had, I got to go to schools with some of the biggest, most, high-profile families in South Africa. I went to school with the Mandelas. I went to school with the Sisulus, and all of them were around me, coming from these privileged families. But because I had the foundation that I had, and I was doing very well, I was able to be in the same environment. And that sort of sets the tone for how I think about life. I always think that it doesn't matter which background you have, but you can basically, sort of equalize. You can, at least the network is working, right? Yeah, you can equalize by, really setting yourself up. But, coming in as a 19-year-old, first of all, I traveled a lot. I didn't want to do the corporate gig thing. I thought I was going to be sort of like an adventurer.
Wasn't yet.
Right.
Yeah.
But, of course, with family, I managed to, complete my degree. But I actually thought I was going to be an accountant, I studied an accounting degree. I was good with numbers, but I felt like this is not my thing. I'm not enjoying this. And I was fortunate to then have the opportunity to join MTN. At the time...
At what age did you join MTN?
I joined MTN. MTN was the third company I'd worked for. Yeah, I was 25 when I worked for MTN.
What was your first job?
My first job was an accountant.
What? You didn't do any of the stuff like... My first job was to work in a kitchen, actually, yeah. So my mom was a teacher at this school, and her being a teacher, so she used to move different countries.
Right.
She was working for these SOS schools. And my first job was working in the kitchen and making, the equivalent of like $10 a month, right? Yeah, so like all children in a way are first, like my cousins on the right side, their first jobs were like waiters, waitresses.
Okay.
Coffee and...
Or during school?
Yes.
No, I also had that opportunity. I actually worked for a movie house. I was actually doing loyalty. There's a movie company in South Africa where, you basically cinema house. And I was selling loyalty cards. Yeah, but that I was doing as a side gig while I was studying.
Does that have an impact on you, right? And sorry, I'm making this very personal for me, right?
Yeah.
Because that had an impact on me.
Yes.
And how I learned how to relate with people.
Yes.
Taught me basics like, a ladder goes both ways.
Yes.
How to talk to elders.
Yes.
Talk to those younger, how to be screamed at.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, for me, definitely. I mean, I was working for State Clinical, and I was paid on commission. So the first thing I needed to do was when people came to buy movies, whilst they're getting their popcorn, I had to go talk to them to get them to subscribe to loyalty. And that takes a lot of confidence. You're going out of your way. So almost like getting a sales kind of, foundation. Yeah. So I managed to very early on start, going out and proactively engaging people. So I think that actually had a lot to do with, just a bit of courage in terms of navigating the corporate world.
Does that build what we see as, because I've been like in the tech startup world as well. And one of the reasons why most of our tech founders, you meet so many amazing tech founders, they have similar products, But what sets the other one apart is how many no's you can take as a person. And so building that muscle early of the confidence to sell, to go out,
100%.
talk to a stranger and be like, hey, take my loyalty program.
100%. No, it really grounds you. I mean, I think I was 16 at the time. So you have no clue, but you have a target. Imagine being a 16-year-old and you have to have targets per day, but you know that that target is linked to some kind of remuneration. So yeah, it gave me a nice grounding. So by the time I started doing my corporate gig, I sort of understood the basics of what it took, to succeed.
Okay, so let's fast forward now. 16 to 25, you become an accountant and you get this accountant gig. You hated numbers?
What?
Did you hate numbers?
I didn't hate numbers. I actually was good at numbers. That's actually why I went into that field. Yeah, it was so natural for me. And I was doing well, but it was boring. I felt like, no, can't be my life. And immediately I actually got an opportunity to join Unilever, which is a FMCG company, which also expanded my skills from a marketing, sales. And I was still selling there. But one thing that happened at Deloitte, I always say to people, I stayed 1 year. It was an accounting firm, Deloitte and Touche. I met my husband there. So that was one outcome that I can, appreciate about my time there. But accounting was not for me. What I loved about working for Unilever was that it was customers, it was marketing. I found it more creative. It tested me and my creativity, and and I felt like that's more was within my space that I wanted to end up.
Okay, so the 25-year-old, you make a move to Unilever. Why did you leave Unilever? How did you get to MTN? How did you get to start moving up the leadership board at MTN?
I was actually headhunted to come into MTN. I was doing I was enjoying my time before I joined, and then they were starting up, a focus on consumers. And because I was working in a consumer FMCG company, I joined MTN. Because at the time, I think we had 10 million customers. It was in South Africa. They had been very focused on technology. And I think the technology was just selling itself. And then they realized, hang on, we actually have to start getting marketing people to help us to design products so that we actually can be, consumer driven in the way we are designing. So I was headhunted and I managed to join the company. I had no clue about technology. I didn't even have a smartphone. I mean, at the time we didn't even have smartphone, but I didn't have a cell phone. Yeah, I didn't have a cell phone.
I'm putting this 8-number thing together. So
yes. So
when you look at the time when you make the shift from Unilever going to MTN, it's a new world, take the telecommunications industry, expansion into Africa. I look at many of my mates, like I went to university with, like, right, at KZN, and many of them just have no clue what's outside the say. Many of them have not been to Africa. What made you say, okay, now I need to go, and when the opportunity came to make a move and go to Uganda, let me move to Rwanda? What kept you being inquisitive? What kept you young and to move for yourself?
No, you're actually right. People back home are not very, open to traveling outside. But I come from a family that had always been all over the world. So at any point in time, I was, my mom spent 10 years in London living there. So I'd always been exposed to Africa, because you go to the UK, there's so many, it's like a metropole of African countries. I spent some time in France, so it's like I already had the background to have an appreciation for Africa. And when you work for MTN, they make it so compelling, I mean, my group CEO at the time used to tell me, Mapula, if you actually want to be somebody in this company, you have to go out, because it's a South African founded company, but, they want you to have the mindset of being exposed to actually what Africa is all about. And I think for me, it was a no-brainer.
So when, again, because this is a culture shock, right? When you get to a new place, it's not Woolies as it should be. It's watching half seen as basics turn to luxuries. But also adapting, now move from pub to good ugali to, beans. There's the meat. Can't buy as much. You're being culture shocks for you everywhere you go. And what are some of those things that you're like, okay, cool, I can't hear without the other, but that's been amazing.
You mean for Rwanda specifically?
Uganda.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, for me, the first time I came to Rwanda, like I think the first month, I just, all I could hear was quiet. I would open my window on a Saturday and I just hear silence. And for a long time, I'm like, what's happening? Because I'm so used to like the chaos, the noise, vibe of South Africa, even Uganda. I just felt silent and peace. And, but I now love it, Initially, I struggled with it and I used to go home a lot. Now I feel like it's actually a gift to have that peace of mind and calmness.
No, it's like one of the best things fully. The fact that I can go to the truck at 10 p.m. and go for a run without the fear of getting mugged.
Right.
Or, someone hitting me from the back.
Right.
The gun, or the security, right?
Right.
Take it for granted. Best thing that
Absolutely
could ever happen. I want to go back to notice something that's very, I want to feel Pan-African, right? The need for us to build for us and why it is important. It comes from, I believe every generation has a role to play, right? There was a generation that needed to get us political liberation. That happened. That generation is handing over to the generation that needs to get us the next frontier, which I believe is economic liberation.
100%.
How do you find that purpose to know, hey, in my field, this is what I need to do to build not only for me, not only for my team, but for the next generation. And I need to go 160%. What drives you? What gets you to that point?
Yeah, such an important question, right? I mean, earlier I spoke about how, it's such a pleasure to see how Rwanda is so intentional about young people. But, it's not by choice because most of the population is young. Now, what we have the opportunity to do as MTN, which I really love, is to really use our technology to actually equip young people for sort of that innovation that they need to create going forward. I think one of the biggest things that we have as a gap right now is that we have the technology, but we don't always have the digital literacy. So, a lot of my mind, is occupied by how do we make sure that we, first of all, enable access. A lot of young people. Today, I was actually sitting in a presentation where they were saying Rwanda has one of the highest voice minutes in the continent, which means people are calling a lot. But then on the other hand, we have one of the lowest data usage. And I was like, but how do we fix this? Because one of the big things that can help young people to really unleash their potential is access to data. So in our industry, that's something that occupies our mind a lot, giving them access. But not only giving them access through, our service, but also through a smartphone. So we're always talking to different manufacturers to say, how can you reduce the pricing so that people can access, these devices. We embarked on an initiative earlier this year where we cut the price of a smartphone by more than 70%. And those smartphones just flew out of the service centers. But it gave us a sense of how hungry these people are and how much this actually can unlock, value for them. So this is something that really keeps us, awake, because we know that in terms of the Africa that we want for these young people, technology is at the center in every way you look at it. And when you compare two young people that are global, we don't want them to get left behind. You don't want these kids, who are going to be competing with kids from China, kids from the US, to not be on the same
Does that
level.
keep you up at night?
Yes.
Okay.
Keeps me up at night because I feel like we have an obligation to make sure that our young people are equally equipped to be able to compete at that same level. That's why I love what's been done, in the country around enabling, institutions such as the Ministry of ICT. We've partnered with them recently on the Hunger Pitch Fest because we see that in the work that they're doing, they are very aggressively equipping young people to be entrepreneurs, to do their own thing using the technology that we have, but also focusing on African problems, because when I saw some of the, the guys that won, I mean, it's like it really gives you, goosebumps, because it's like it's innovation, but not for innovation's sake, but it's innovation that can actually change lives in Africa.
With that, you're talking about something that are challenges, right? You personally, what are some of those challenges you look back at to like, that day I was not going to wake up, or that day I felt like giving up, right? And then how did you bounce back from that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, being a woman in telecoms, there's been struggle, right? Especially historically. I've now, been in the industry for long. But initially, when I was in that environment, I was often the only person in the room as a woman. I'd often get a colleague texting me to say, "Did you notice you were the only one in the room?" And I'm like, why did he remind me? Because often when I went in there, I was blinded by it. But, there is some subconscious bias because you're a woman. So you get perceived to not be as equipped to, take on the challenge. So that became a sort of like a focus for me to say, I must be so good at what I do that my gender, it doesn't matter.
Does it matter to you this when you're there? And I believe this is a responsibility. Because I come from the view of the pie is big enough for all of us to eat, right? So if I have a seat at the table, even if I punch my way to create my seat at the table, it's how do I create a table big enough for other people, right? Has that ever hit you? We say, okay, how do I have more women, girls? How do I empower them, even from a younger age, leadership-wise, to make sure that they take up more seats at the table?
Absolutely. That is something I'm very passionate about because of my experience, I've often, in Rwanda, I've had the opportunity to speak to a lot of ladies across different platforms. And my main message to each of them always is, just to try and invite them, attract them to join our industry, because they're so low in terms of representation. We've only got about 36% of women who are, venturing into telecoms. And when you ask them, it's like there's still that intimidation that they have. And though when we finally get them in, you get some of the most brilliant minds being women, So it's something that really, we want to make sure that we are, first of all, enabling that environment to be there for them, to know that they actually matter in a telecom space, but also making it meaningful for them to say, actually, they can actually succeed. It's not something they have to be fearful of. They don't have to be intimidated about. So I speak a lot at some of the forums, and I've also got mentees. I've got 4 ladies that I mentor currently in Rwanda, and a lot of it is around really empowering them, just giving them that digital confidence to know that they actually can thrive, even if, they are in the minority. So I've been very careful to make sure that I select people that I think I can impact, people who've been in my own journey. One of the ladies I mentor, she's the head of analytics at Irembo. And, it's a big job and very, demanding. But, my job is to always, really affirm her, make sure that, she's able to excel and succeed in such an environment.
Does you, and when you look back, does you being at the table, and the moment, that light bulb moment, you're like, okay, I'm the only lady here. Did you notice a need to to contribute to the team and bring a perception that, let's say, when products are being designed, right? They're not largely because they're being designed from a guy's lens, or at that time being designed from a guy's lens, from a man's lens, but they weren't being designed to accommodate what's majority of the population of the continent, which is women. Did you see that, and do you feel like maybe you contributed and notice that this is my role? I need to make them see that we need to do this for both sexes, or we need to not do it for just one particular group of people.
Absolutely. And in Rwanda,
how hard was that, the punch going back and forth?
I think the first thing is awareness, right? Because you need to be aware of this as a problem. And I think the great thing is that in the work that we do, we have partners who are very focused on women. And when basically they challenge us, we also go and we probe to see actually what's happening with the data. And what we see is that even in our industry, there's a disproportionate sort of access over men over women. So that's the first one. And the second one is when we talk to women, a lot of the things that they talk about is, things that we don't have in terms of services that they might need. But things such as, a lot of the women that are doing trade, for example, they have specific needs that they want to be served, which are quite different from men. And what we love about them, we have a savings product called More Cash. And what we love about the women is that actually
Pay some money.
we love that. Yeah, we love that.
Yeah, right.
When you look at the women, they are the most credit worthy. They're the ones most responsible about managing their accounts. They repay on time. I mean, all of these attributes that show that actually, if we design something specific for them, they'd actually even do better. So I think we are noticing it a bit more, and we are seeing opportunities to actually, as women, but also with men, there's a he for she agenda as well to get them on board to supporting the focus on women problems when we are designing products.
Yeah, I think it's I'm saying, give a woman a job and she'll feed the whole family.
Exactly.
We'll get less on sports. I want to talk about the future of telecommunications as well. There's the coming of AI right now. The industry has changed largely. At one point, there was payment for service fee. Now, BlackBerry services. Now it's data is, where many telcos are making most of their money, and it keeps on changing. What will the future of telecommunications look like in Africa, let's say 5 years from today?
That is so exciting. Firstly, because, as MTN, we are so proud to be in the center of it. The industry is actually pivoting right now. For the last 5 years, we've been focusing on what we call Ambition 2025 strategy. It was introduced in 2020. Now, next year is 2025. So the conversations we are having are about what is going to happen beyond 2025. And the following themes are really quite powerful in terms of how they come across. So today in Africa, we only have 40% of people who have access to financial services. As much as financial services is so booming in Rwanda, currently sitting at 92% in terms of access, in the rest of the continent, globally, it's only 40%. So what we see is the explosion of financial services, even beyond what we see now. Because even in Rwanda, as much as we have high penetration, for 92% of people having access, they are using basic services. So what we envisage is an environment where mobile money can become like a sort of Alibaba, Alipay today is like a thriving ecosystem that, supports 1.3 billion people. And you can get practically anything on that platform. So we envisage mobile money becoming a platform that can do that, where you can literally pay for anything and access anything just by pressing your mobile phone. That's number one. I think secondly, what we envisage in terms of the data space, we see everyone have access to smartphones, literally smartphones everywhere. And with a smartphone today, there's about 7 devices, if you think about it, that are embedded in a smartphone. First of all, if you remember the old iPods, so you've got the music. Secondly, you remember we all used to have PCs at some PCs. Your iPhone, your phone can become basically a PC. Yeah. You can actually use a camera. You don't need to lug a camera around. So literally, as for each one of those use cases, a smartphone is able to give people all of that access. So what we envisage in 5 years is that everyone will have a smartphone, which means everyone will be connected through the smartphone. But not only that, devices will be connected. Because one of the things we're doing now, we're working on use cases that allow for devices such as, your home security systems to be connected. Today, when you drive around Kigali, there's a company we work with which allows for the motors to use a smartphone, a SIM card, and they use that SIM card to be able to track the routes. So everything is connected. So what we envisage is everything will be connected. Your car, the motors that we see, your fridge at home, if you want to regulate temperature, your security alarm that you can manage. Today on my phone, I can actually see my house in South Africa at any point in time, inside, outside, just by pressing a button. So we foresee everything being connected, because basically, really the world of IoT will allow us to be able to use technologies such as 5G, 6G to be able to do that. I think thirdly, what we envisage is that in terms of the things that we take long to do, today everyone is always building applications, taking a long time. It takes us, up to 3 months sometimes to build a product. And in the future, and we've already started seeing with AI, those products can be done in 2 days.
Yeah. Shout out to ChatGPT and the likes of all these the language models that are being introduced.
Which is quite scary, right? But it will leave us to be able to use our time for other things, because the technology can take care of itself.
Things adapt, so...
Exactly.
In there, though, don't you see, and there's been a call, right? We've seen it happen to MTN, right? Like, the call for like a split of the telco side and the mobile money side, which could grow into its own banking sector. And then, aren't you saying more splits to try and decenter what is seen as monopolies, and what kind of position does that put organizations like telcos?
Yeah, it's a very interesting point, because, for a monopoly to form, it takes a lot of investment. Yeah. So mobile money was launched like 9 years ago, and it took billions and billions of francs to build it, right? You're building, first of all, the platform. You're building the network that allows the service to thrive. And then you make sure that the distribution is there. Today, we have almost 500,000 agents who are able to take payments. So investment. So when we talk about monopoly, it starts from actually a lot of investment. That's the first thing. So for where mobile money is today came from a lot of investment from MTN to make sure that the ecosystem is there to be able to, serve the financial services sector. Now, at the same time, because you want it to even grow further, because, mobile money is an Africa success. Even, globally, they haven't been able to manage what to achieve. So they are very interested in investing. So to be able to give that full potential, things like splitting of the two companies is positioned for that, so that you can actually see it standing as a standalone financial services company that is able to attract even more investment. So it's not so much about the monopoly, it's actually allowing it to thrive at a larger scale and even attracting investment from externally to be able to really grow even further than what it is growing today.
I'm glad you bring that up, the success of mobile money across the continent. Mobile money just didn't work in South Africa, right? Why has there been such a huge difference to the rest of the continent that in this one particular country, it's never kicked off, while Zimbabwe, Zambia, or North, everywhere, it's such a success and it's needed for everyone. Have you ever put your mind around it and why it has never worked there?
No, absolutely. I mean, the case for mobile money works where people are not banked, where there's a void in financial services. 5 years ago, South Africa was at 70% banked. So the banks were very aggressive then to make sure that everyone gets sort of connected. But not only that, they also digitized. So some of the innovations around, e-wallets started many years ago. And because of that, even the sort of like lower income segments were able to access. So when mobile money came, the banks had already consolidated. But not only that, for mobile money to thrive, you need a very sort of like symbiotic relationship with the banks. So in Rwanda, we have agreements with the big banks, so that actually we can actually transact and, feed the ecosystem. Now in South Africa, the banks refused. So none of the banks in South Africa agreed to sign agreements because they knew that if they are able to enable this thing, it's just going to take over. So part of the difficulty is that banks have not really been willing to work with mobile money because they are basically protecting their space and also they're digitizing. And one of the innovations that we have, which is sort of like the e-wallet, a lot of them already have it.
What's the day-to-day like in Mapula's world? What time do you wake up in the morning? What time do you go to bed? What is your schedule like?
Right. So I'm an early riser. I wake up super early. I'm up by 4:00 every day. I always say I told my son that he broke my body clock because my son is 10 this year. And for the last 10 years since he was born, I've never been able to sleep past that time because of, the routine I established with him then when he was a baby. So at the time I would wake up involuntarily and then I just, use that energy to do something. So that's when my day starts 10 years later. But,
Good discipline. That is the work, they say.
Exactly. So somebody bought me the book 5 a.m. Club.
I hate the book.
You hate the book?
I'm a morning person.
Right.
I just hate that book.
Right.
Yeah.
So I actually didn't enjoy it either, but it spoke to the behaviors that I guess people who are 5 a.m.ers do. For me, what it does do is that it eases my day because my day is I'm able to focus on other things because I use the time in the morning. But I'm also, into fitness. So, diligently.
Gym?
Yeah, diligently, I have a coach 3 days a week who comes to my home just to keep right. Yeah, so which I love, and I feel like it gives me just that mental stimulation that I need to do what I need to do, and then I start my day. Most of my days in meetings. I'm either meeting stakeholders, which is something that Christina loves, which is actually a big part of my job. Really making sure that MTN.
What is the lobbying world like, right? Of having to convince people on a daily basis. Yeah, that law you're going to pass is going to, fuck us, or it's not going to do X, Y, Z. It may get you money right now.
Right.
Get, someone else money. But, a few months down the road, it will take us 3 steps back. How is that on a daily basis? Especially, you're not only doing it, or you haven't only done it in one country. It's across, so people keep changing.
Yeah.
How is that?
I think what I appreciate about Rwanda is that they are very consultative. So when you call it lobbying, actually they invite. So whether it's any ministry, no, it's really true. It's really true. There's a lot of consultation, which I really appreciate, which is not, by the way, doesn't happen everywhere. So whether there's a new regulation or policy to be passed, most of the time, actually, that is shared with us. Recently, we were busy writing a policy together with the regulator, and they engaged us, sitting for 2 hours, going line by line to make sure that whatever they are putting forward actually is going to enable us, because they understand the role we're playing in the community, in the economy, and as well as community. So I think, for me working in Rwanda, I think that it's enabling to be able to be consulted. I think in other markets it's quite tough. It comes down as directives, and often you can't react. But at the end of the day, you still have to make sure that visibility, because sometimes these sort of decisions are passed without full sort of awareness or understanding of the implications. So we have an obligation to make sure that we create that awareness.
Mapula, I have quick fire questions, right? We talked about the experience thing. So, quick question. Trojan horse of youth versus the been there, done that experience. What would you side with?
I don't understand the question.
The Trojan horse, or, young people, hungry and everything.
Yeah.
And then someone who's been there, done it.
Yeah.
What's the experience? And
definitely the Trojan horse.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
Because I feel like in my industry, that's what we need. Because 99% of the things we are working with never been done. So trust me, I'm not going to get them from somebody who's been there, done that. Because we are writing new chapters that have never been written before. I mean, I recently had to do an AI course. after so many.
And unlearn.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like young people will bring a fresh perspective in their own, they're digital natives. But when they were born, there were smartphones. So they can actually teach us a thing or two.
Okay. What's your heaviest decision, unmade decision? Heaviest unmade decision?
Heaviest unmade?
Yeah, a decision you look back and you're like, if I had taken that decision, my life would have been quite different.
I don't know. I feel like I've made the right decisions that I needed to make for my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing in life that has surprised you the most and keeps surprising you?
How my love for motherhood. How I never thought I was the mother type. I've always been a sort of like a get-go type of person. And, my role as a mom is one of my best jobs. That surprised me.
It's a good surprise. How much of success is down to luck as compared to skill?
I won't call it luck, but I will call it opportunity. Yeah, I would say, I'd say there's more people I've seen being successful because of opportunity than skill. Because I've seen a lot of people with skill, but not being at the right place, right time, not having the right, people around them. Because it's often in those moments where you have, around people that the opportunity strike, even though you have the skill.
Mm-hmm. What is the one rule that you look back and say, I will change? If you're given an opportunity to change one rule about life, what's that one rule you'll change?
One rule?
Yes.
I think for me, I would remove these borders on the continent.
I think that deserves a hand clap. That deserves a hand clap. I had it. Yeah. Heavy. Do away with
I would remove these borders on the continent. My word. I think like we would do so much better as a continent. We would thrive. We would actually grow exponentially. We'll actually be a threat, yeah.
The first episode of this podcast, funny enough, was around those borders, FCFT, and someone who's trying to do something about it. Lucy Mbabazi, you were a pioneer.
Yes.
She's very passionate about
this.
Right. Mapula, thank you for making the time.
Thank you. It's been such a great conversation.
No, thank you for dropping the nuggets. Ladies and gentlemen, Mapula Bodibe, CEO MTN Rwanda. She hates borders. We all hate these African borders. And if you want to be part of more conversations, please don't forget to subscribe. The channel is at The K Financial across all your podcast platforms. Thank you for making the time. Brought to you by The K Financial and Best Production. Have a great rest of your day.